A jumbo jet carrying 524 souls on board lost its ability to control itself at 7,300 meters in the skies above Japan. The mayday signal was initiated by the crew. As both pilots desperately tried to regain control of the jumbo, the cabin was in a chaotic state. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling due to a loss of pressurization. Screaming voices filled the cabin as passengers hastily wrote farewell notes to their loved ones. What happened? And can the pilots manage to land the aircraft at the nearest airport? This is the story of Japan Flight 123. The story starts on the evening of August 12, 1985, and while most of Japan prepared to celebrate the traditional Obon Festival, a time to honor ancestors and return to one's place of birth, Haneda Airport was abuzz with eager travelers longing to return home. On the tarmac, airplanes stood in patient formation, waiting to transport passengers to their destinations. Among these aircraft, a Japan Airlines Flight 123 Boeing 747 jumbo jet was gearing up for takeoff, destined for the city of Osaka, a mere 400 kilometers away. This domestic flight was scheduled to leave Haneda Airport at 6:12 p.m. local time, with an anticipated arrival in Osaka just an hour later. In the cockpit, there was First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, who had joined JAL on April 18, 1970, and was about to take command of this mighty jumbo on this special day. Typically, the captain occupies the left-hand seat, while the co-pilot assists from the right-hand seat. However, today was an exception. Yutaka Sasaki had the esteemed privilege of piloting the flagship of the Japanese airline. Yutaka Sasaki had accumulated nearly 3,963 hours and 34 minutes of total flight experience, with 2,665 hours and 30 minutes specifically on the Boeing 747. According to company regulations, the co-pilot could assume control from the left-hand seat if they had successfully completed a demanding training program and if a highly experienced captain was present in the right-hand seat to supervise. In the right-hand seat was Masami Takahama, a 49-year-old male who had joined JAL on December 1, 1966. His total flying time amounted to 12,423 hours and 41 minutes, including 4,842 hours and 22 minutes on the Boeing 747. He was revered as one of the most seasoned JAL captains and was a legend within the airline. Accompanying them in the cockpit was flight engineer Hiroshi Fukuda, a 46-year-old male who had joined JAL on April 1, 1957. His accumulated flight time tallied 9,831 hours and 3 minutes, with 3,846 hours and 31 minutes specifically devoted to the Boeing 747. His mastery of the B-747 was unquestionable, boasting nearly 5,000 hours of experience. In the cabin, a dedicated team of 15 cabin crew members stood ready to attend to the 509 passengers on board. The aircraft they operated was a Boeing 747 SR-100, one of the 10 owned by JAL. This shorter version of the jumbo jet had been tailor-made for Japan Airlines, featuring a high-capacity, all-economy seating arrangement designed for shorter domestic flights with only economy-class seats. The aircraft was manufactured on January 30, 1974, and has a total flight time of 25,030 hours and 18 minutes. It was equipped with 4 Pratt & Whitney JT9D-7A engines. Let's take a look at the aircraft we'll be flying with shortly. At Osaka International Airport in June 1978, the aircraft experienced a tail strike. A tail strike occurs when the aircraft, during the landing phase and a flare phase of the approach process, pitches at too high of an angle, resulting in a high angle of attack that can cause minor or major structural damage. After undergoing provisional repairs by JAL at Osaka International Airport from June 7 to 14, 1978, the aircraft was transferred to Tokyo International Airport, where regular repairs were carried out by a Boeing AOG or Aircraft on Ground repair team dispatched by the company to Tokyo International Airport between June 17 and July 11, 1978. The required parts were supplied by the Boeing company, and the lower structures of the aft fuselage were reinstalled and repaired. Unfortunately, the repairs were not performed properly, leading to the development of small cracks in the aircraft's fuselage each time it climbed and cabin pressure pushed against the bulkhead. Today, these cracks would have serious consequences. Now, let's return to the flight. The weather was good today, and the crew expected a short routine flight. The aircraft began taxiing from Spot 18 at 18:04 hours and took off from runway 15L at 18:12 hours. In a matter of moments, the crew and its 519 passengers were airborne. At approximately 18:16:55 hours, while climbing to 24,000 feet, the aircraft requested a direct route to sea perch from its current position, and the request was approved at 18:18:33 hours. At 18:24:35 hours, just before reaching 24,000 feet, the aircraft was headed towards sea perch and approaching the east coast of the South Luzhu Peninsula. The aircraft entered an abnormal situation that significantly impacted the continuation of the flight. Simultaneously, a loud noise akin to a boom was heard, causing the aircraft to shake, followed by the captain's transmission of Squawk 77, indicating an emergency code number 7700 on the ATC transponder. The crew desperately attempted to determine what had just occurred, but their instruments provided no clues to the mystery. Chaos erupted in the cabin, marked by a complete loss of cabin pressure, oxygen masks dropping from the ceiling due to the pressure drop, and panicked voices throughout the aircraft. The aircraft suffered a sudden decompression that tore off a significant portion of the tail and resulted in the loss of all hydraulic systems, responsible for controlling movement of the wings, rudder, and elevators. The aircraft became uncontrollable and began to deviate from its course. The captain requested permission from Tokyo Control to descend to and maintain 22,000 feet, and to return to Haneda due to the abnormal situation.
Okay, it's been 1, 2, 3, because
the crew struggled to control the aircraft due to the drop in hydraulic pressure. In modern aircraft, all flight surfaces responsible for turning and pitching are too heavy to operate with cables and pulleys, so hydraulic pressure assists the crew in operating the flight controls with minimal effort. At 18:25:40 hours, the aircraft requested a direct route to Oshima. Tokyo Control inquired about the desired direction, whether a right or left turn to change heading toward Baneda. The pilot responded with the intention to make a right turn. Tokyo Control subsequently issued instructions to fly on a magnetic course of 90 degrees after executing a right turn for radar vector to Oshima. This was acknowledged by the aircraft at 18:25:52 hours. Subsequently, the aircraft deviated slightly to the right of the course near the middle of the South Luzhu Peninsula. At around this time, unusual variations in longitudinal motion and Dutch roll motions began, and these phenomena, accompanied by large or small movements, persisted until just before the crash. Nothing seemed to work, and all controls were unresponsive. The aircraft was at an altitude of approximately 7,300 meters, traveling at approximately 540 kilometers per hour, without any control over its movements. At 18:27:02 hours, Tokyo Control confirmed the declaration of an emergency and asked about the nature of the emergency, but received no response from the aircraft. At 18:28:31 hours, Tokyo Control once again instructed the aircraft to follow a magnetic course of 90 degrees for the radar vector to Oshima. But the response was now uncontrollable and was received at 18:28:35 hours.
124, fly heading 090, radar vector to Oshima. Control, roger, understood.
The pilot, Captain Masami Takahama, with over 10,000 hours of flying experience, attempted to regain control of the aircraft and sent distress calls to air traffic control. He requested to return to Tokyo, but was unable to stabilize the aircraft or change its altitude. the aircraft flew erratically for another 32 minutes, during which it descended and ascended multiple times. At around 1830, the aircraft passed over Suruga Bay and then changed its course to the right for a northbound flight. Around 1831, Tokyo Control asked the aircraft, "Can you descend?" To which the pilot responded, "Descending now." Tokyo Control then inquired about the aircraft's altitude, and the captain replied with their altitude at 24,000 feet in response to the current altitude query. At 1832, Tokyo Control confirmed the aircraft. "Your current position is 72 miles from Nagoya Airport. Can you land at Nagoya?" To this, the captain responded with a request to return to Haneda. At 1832-26, Tokyo Control suggested continuing communications in Japanese to help the crew concentrate better on managing the aircraft, and this proposal was accepted by the aircraft. At approximately 1835, the aircraft made a right turn at a point about 35 kilometers west of Mount Fuji for an eastward flight, and about 3 minutes later, the aircraft turned left at a point approximately 7 kilometers from Mount Fuji, heading for a northeastward flight. At around 1841 hours, the aircraft initiated a descent from an altitude of about 21,000 feet over the vicinity of Otsuki City, Yamanashi Prefecture, to an altitude of about 17,000 feet. During this descent, the aircraft changed its heading approximately 360 degrees to the right in about 3 minutes. Subsequently, the aircraft continued flying, rapidly descending eastward, and became increasingly uncontrollable. At 1847-07, the aircraft requested a direct route to Haneda. In response, Tokyo Control instructed the aircraft to maintain a heading of 90 degrees for Haneda's active runway 22, which was acknowledged by the aircraft. Then, in reply to the question, "Is the aircraft uncontrollable?" posed by Tokyo Control at 1847-17, the response was, "Uncontrollable." Starting from approximately 1848 hours, the aircraft turned left at an altitude of about 7,000 feet over the vicinity of Okutama Town and Nishitama-gun. After reaching about 13,000 feet at approximately 1853 hours, the aircraft began descending again and repeatedly transmitted "uncontrollable" at 1853-31. At around 1854-19, the aircraft switched to communications with Tokyo Approach at an altitude of 11,000 feet based on Tokyo Control's instruction. At 1854-25, the aircraft inquired about its position, to which Tokyo Approach provided a location 55 nautical miles from Haneda and 25 nautical miles west of Kumagaya, which was acknowledged by the aircraft at 1854-55. At 1855-05, Tokyo Approach informed the aircraft that both Haneda and Yokota were available, and this information was confirmed by the aircraft. Afterward, there was no response from the aircraft to calls from both Tokyo Approach and Yokota Approach Control. The aircraft flew at a low, slowly ascending speed, slightly nose up from the Okutama area, just before Mount Sanpai, elevation 1,700 meters, and proceeded towards Mount. The aircraft suddenly banked left and disappeared behind the mountain. Subsequently, smoke and flashing lights were observed emanating from behind the mountain. The aircraft contacted several trees on the ridge, hit the ridge, and ultimately crashed on a ridge located further north, approximately 570 meters northwest of the second ridge. The estimated crash time is approximately 1856 hours. The impact was devastating. The plane disintegrated into thousands of pieces and created a massive fireball visible from afar. Most of the passengers and crew died instantly or shortly after the crash. Only 4 people survived, 3 women and a girl, who were seated at the rear of the plane. They suffered severe injuries and were trapped in the wreckage. The crash resulted in 505 passenger fatalities and 4 serious injuries. Investigators embarked on their journey to uncover what had happened to Flight 123. Rescue efforts were hindered by the remote and rugged location of the crash site. It took 14 hours for the first rescue team to reach the survivors by helicopter. Some volunteers also attempted to reach the site on foot, but they encountered numerous difficulties due to the terrain and weather conditions. The survivors were airlifted to hospitals and received medical treatment. The investigation into the crash's cause revealed that it was due to a faulty repair conducted by Boeing technicians following a tail strike incident 7 years prior. A tail strike occurs when the plane's tail hits the runway during landing or takeoff. In 1978, Flight 123 experienced a heavy bounce upon landing at Osaka Airport, damaging its rear pressure bulkhead, a partition separating the pressurized cabin from the unpressurized tail section. Boeing repaired the bulkhead by using a single splice plate instead of the required double one as per the original design. This reduced the bulkhead strength by 70% and created a weak point that eventually cracked under repeated stress from pressurization and depressurization cycles. The crack continued to grow over time until it finally ruptured on August 12, 1985. The rupture resulted in an explosive decompression that tore off most of the vertical stabilizer and severed all 4 hydraulic lines running through the tail. Without hydraulic power, the pilot had no means to control the plane's direction or speed. He could only make minor adjustments using engine thrust, but it was insufficient to prevent the crash. The investigation also revealed several human errors and communication failures that contributed to the disaster. For instance, Boeing did not inform Japan Airlines about the improper repair or inspect other planes with similar repairs. Air traffic controllers did not provide clear instructions or priority to Flight 123 when it declared an emergency. The rescue teams lacked accurate information regarding the crash site's location or condition. The crash of Flight 123 had a profound impact on Japan and the world. It raised questions about aviation safety standards and regulations, as well as corporate responsibility and liability. It also elicited public outrage and sorrow over the loss of so many lives. Many people visited the crash site to pay their respects and leave flowers, messages, and personal items. A memorial park was constructed near Mount Osutaka, featuring a stone monument engraved with the names of all 520 victims. Every year on August 12th, a memorial service is held at the park to honor their memory. Flight 123 was a tragic event that should never have occurred. It resulted from a series of errors and failures that could have been prevented or rectified. It also highlighted how fragile life is and how important it is to cherish every moment with our loved ones. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this video interesting, you'll also like this one. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more aviation stories. See you next time.